Have you ever stared at your world building notes for your story and just kind of sat there and thought, my magic's cool, but how does it actually affect people's lives or the society that my story's taking place in? How does it change people, like farmers to rebels or economies to battlegrounds? If you feel like your story is isolated, like the magic's kind of a sideshow, instead of being the beating heart of your story, or part of the beating heart, I think you're missing the ripple that hooks readers and lands some pretty sweet publishing deals. So in the last 2 videos, we've talked about the fundamentals of magic systems and hard and soft magic to balance them as well. Now let's integrate that magic into your world. If it isn't already, you can probably learn some other ways to make that happen. If you've already got some pretty cool ideas, maybe drop those in the comments below. I'm pretty interested to see some of them. Like maybe, what if magic had some kind of tax? If you used it, you had to pay a magic tax to the government or something. I don't know. First, let's explore some of the potential ripples that your magic would have in your existing world. How does it reshape society on just its existence? No magic will ever exist in a vacuum, right? It's gonna be dividing, driving economies, and mirroring real world stuff, issues, problems, events. Maybe we could start with class structure. There could be the magical elite and the non-magic lower people. In Mistborn, I know I've talked a lot about Mistborn, but it's very easy to talk about these elements with Brandon Sanderson's works. Allomancy is a metal-burning genetic magic. Well, it's somewhat genetic. It's hereditary, you could say, where there is a breeding inequality, which is a nice fuel for underdog arcs, by the way. Let's also imagine a sci-fi world where there could be a similar aspect, with psionic powers being limited to very specific blood genetic trackers or whatever that only occurs in the high-end nobility or something. Or it could actually be some kind of gene technology editing or DNA editing stuff that only the rich and wealthy could afford. This could help to widen the gap of a cyberpunk dystopia. Now, here's an interesting one. Let's treat magic as a currency or a resource. Maybe mana mining is huge, could boom an entire industry, where over-harvesting may lead to magical famines. Maybe artifacts could influence stock markets or control stock markets. And when that supply, that mana is supposed to be mined, is gone, those markets crash because those artifacts don't have power. Or if you're looking at a hybrid system, like we talked about in the previous video, cyber magic hacks could turn data into spells, where it actually will commodify knowledge. These ripples do quite in fact sell books. Makes the story interesting. When in doubt, be interesting. And not only do these ripples resonate through your world, it helps it feel real and lived in. Like it's not just some backdrop. There's depth to it, right? Instead of going to a play and they've only got a few little structures in the back of the stage, it feels like you're looking through a window to a world beyond. Now let's take those ripples and try to crank it up into conflicts, the engine that drives your story. Magic-driven wars or rebellions aren't just fights. They're born from maybe systemic imbalances or some other issue that's born in the economy that the people live in. Maybe the farmers are going through something. They have access to things that maybe other people don't. That then drives in some kind of rebellion, which is pretty interesting. Here's another example. Let's look at the Wheel of Time with its tainted magic for the male side. Sidene. If you don't know kind of anything about that, there's 2 halves to the magic in Wheel of Time. There's the male half and the female half. The male half was tainted or corrupted by the Dark One. And when people who are male channelers, when they channel, it makes them go insane, makes them go mad, corrupts their mind and soul. This very much widens a gender gap for sure. So much so that they've literally gone and killed as many male channelers as possible, if not all of them, to prevent these insane channelers from destroying the world. That is one of the most driving aspects of the Wheel of Time. Think of this in your story. How would that drive conflict for what's going on in your world? Or raise the conflict up by adding in some of those effects and ripples. Maybe if you're looking at a science fiction, there could be this nano magic that glitches and could ignite a huge corporate war over this technology magic thing. Here's a bit of a cheat code for a plot hook. You could treat magic like a weapon, which will create endless twists. There could be many forbidden spells that escalates genocides, or some kind of hybrid magic tech hacking into people's minds or something like that. Big deal. For the serious writers who are trying to do, careers out of this, layer in those elements. A deeper layer that's not too complex and off-putting will really hook people. Now, what are some of the pitfalls for doing stuff like this with these ripples? Some of the battles may feel a little shallow, so just make sure you're rooting them in these integrations of your magic into the world. Your readers will thank you. How would the daily life and culture be affected? Not just conflict, but just the basic stuff. Because they're not gonna just stop at the big drama conflicts, right? If it's affecting the big stuff, it's gonna be affecting the small stuff as well. It'll seep into how people live. Not only that, but it's also going to affect their beliefs, their myths and culture as well, and even potentially alter their decision-making and common sense. I think after all of the big stuff is influenced and integrated with your magic, this smaller stuff will actually make your story feel way more alive than just the big stuff. Big stuff's great, but this will increase immersion. It'll make people feel like they're in a world, not above it watching down. They'll be in it, experiencing it with the rest of the people as they're watching the main characters do their thing. It'll really breathe authenticity into your story. There's a couple examples and maybe thought provokers of this. You could think of like common rituals that help to ground magic, or maybe they do morning mana meditations. MMM, anyway. These morning meditations might help fantasy villages be more protected or have some kind of cultural significance. Or let's look at a science fiction cyberpunk world where you have these nano magic implants to help people to sync with their daily commutes and help them get to work on time. Culture will inevitably evolve around these myths, which are obviously going to be affected by the magic, and different cultural elements. You're going to see festivals focusing on different stuff like this, for sure. Probably some taboos or forbidden stuff based off of the magic, and just basic beliefs being altered by them. Here's some other cool examples I've just been thinking of and looking into. You could have a science fiction world where there are certain areas or places that have signals that are emitted that prevent certain types of magic or technology from working. You could think of some fantasy hybrids where smartphones have certain runes etched onto them for certain additional effects or better battery life or better screen brightness. This could be a really big pitfall if you ignore the small things, the details. That's what makes us professionals, right? It's not just the fundamentals, which are super important, but it's also the details that surround it. These small little dailies, the things that affect your normal people's lives, those would definitely be affected by your magic. All right, now let's consider an exercise to help you do this. Think of it like an integration boot camp. Let's look at potentially a system you worked on in an earlier video while watching something about magic systems I've been talking about. Now take that and pull it into this situation. How does it ripple into either just an example you're working on, or how does that magic system affect your world? Maybe for the emotion-fueled system I talked about in a previous video, you could think about different emotional rituals you have to do to prevent certain things from happening while you're working the field. Something to work on suppressing your anger. Maybe you're some kind of accountant and you're freaking annoyed by your bosses because of, bad spending habits or something like that. You don't want a fireball blasting out of your eye sockets just randomly if you get real pissed. You might actually see some really interesting anger suppression techniques and professions that help people to do this, because it's going to be a common thing probably in that kind of world. All right, so here's the exercise. Step 1, pick that system you wanted to work with. 2, drop it into the pond and see how the ripples affect everything around it as it drops into the water. Think of societies with classes and economy. Think of conflict and the hooks of the stories there and the daily culture. 3, twist for plot. How does this affect a farmer's life? How does this affect the economy? Would it crash? Would it cause problems for the villains and the heroes in the story? Write it all down. Take time to pause if you want to, or if you could do after the video, whatever you want to do. Share your progress in the comments. I'd love to hear some of the cool things you guys are coming up with, because, you know, inspiration, we can all share from it and do some pretty cool stuff, I think. I might just share some of those examples in the next video that I got coming out. So keep an eye for that. All right then. Well, I think that just about covers integrating your magic. It's a simple concept. Doesn't take too much to explain. Hopefully some of the exercises and examples help you do that for your own story. And I promise you, if you do stuff like this, these exercises, really try, it'll help your story and your world feel alive, which is way more interesting than just reading a boring book that doesn't have all those things. I hope I gave you a nudge, or at least some kind of tool to do that, hopefully. If you actually felt like I did something helpful for you, and if you felt like this video was entertaining and was informative, go ahead and like and subscribe, please. It really helped me. Anyway, now go tell stories, dang it. Don't forget. Don't forget. There are no bad ideas. Just unfinished ones.